Greetings and salutation. This is Dr. Monica on this Thursday, March 31st, just coming to you for a few minutes to recap my 4-city book tour on the East Coast for the book Wounds of Wisdom. And if you don't have a copy of the book, you need to make sure you get the book. But before I recap, I just want to thank my sponsors for believing in me, believing in the book, for paying all expenses to Harve de Grace, Maryland, Washington, D.C., Baltimore, Maryland, and New York. I also would like to thank one of my coaches, Dr. Leroy, who have pushed me, who have given me some tips and things to do to get the message out. For my PR person, Angela, thank you, girl. You are the bomb, and you are helping me to move out of my comfort zone. There are so many people who have encouraged me, but I just want to mention a few people who have been constant encouragers and supporters in making sure that I had what I need, that my peace of mind and my head stayed straight. Susan, girl, love you. Paula, thank you for checking on me. Around certain holidays, you wanted to make sure that all was well. Tisa, for your constant encouragement. Trina, the sister I never had. Eric, we go way back, and you have been a constant reminder of just life and encouragement. Miss Millie, I don't know what to say. You have become a mother figure to me. Cousin Renee, thank you for just stepping in. And my one and only brother, Kelvin, thank you for your support, your love, and just filling in some gaps. I also just want to thank everyone who invited me on to their podcasts, their radio show, the book clubs, the news outlets, and especially the pastors who had the courage and made me comfortable to share my message, my mission, and my movement of unsilencing the silence and talking about things that most people just won't. I had also had a brief stop in Las Vegas just to sign couple of books there. But this tour was relaxing. It was eye-opening. It was exciting, and it was disheartening all at the same time. I heard stories and testimonies from so many people about the book and how the book has helped them. They have read the book over or just starting to read the book. One particular individual, I'm not going to name names because no one gave me permission to use their names, but this person talked about a workplace wound and how she had to kiss, I believe it was her boss, in order to keep her job. And we hear about this all the time, the Me Too movement, but some people had to do what they had to do. Yes, they had choices, but she talked about how the book has helped her. Then another individual talked about church wounds and how her pastor threw her on his desk in his office and attempted to have sexual intercourse with her. Then we have someone who's talking about family wounds, where she's being sued by a relative and in a fraudulent case. And in the midst of this, she was attempting suicide and decided that she wanted to live after she read my book. And that's a family wound that runs deep. Then I had a father who had or discussed about his children turning away from them because their mother betrayed him, as well as their children. Then we had people talking about their business wounds and marriage and divorce wounds. So if you have a copy of Wounds of Wisdom, you know that I talk very transparently about those 7 topics. And I thank those individuals for sharing their testimony or their journey. Because one thing about it, if we keep silent, nothing heals. As I was going through this particular tour, I started asking people who read the book. One individual read the book in less than 2 days. And I asked her, what was the most important thing, or what stood out to you, or what impacted you the most about the book? And she said church wounds, the church wounds chapter. I'm moving my papers because I want to make sure that I stay on topic. And this is a very prevalent, reoccurring message that I hear. I did a survey about courses that people wanted to have, and I have a course for each chapter of the book. So if it's children wounds, the course is called Overcoming Children's Wounds. If it's family wounds, it's Overcoming Family Wounds. If it's church wounds, it's Overcoming Church Wounds. Friends wounds, Overcoming Friends wounds. And when I did this survey, the number one course that people wanted was church wounds. Why are church wounds so prevalent? And why are they so deep? Why do they cut so deep? Why is it still going on? I'm talking about these are 70, 80-year-old women, retired women, young women who are saying these things. And if you've read my chapter on church wounds, you understand that I have experienced these things in churches for over 17 years. And more prevalently in the past 6 or 7 years. It's time out for making excuses. People don't understand what they believe. I don't think people understand what they believe. I also think that people don't know what they believe. I also believe that the beliefs have been manipulated, twisted, deceived on many occasions. And why is that? Excuse me. Because the same teachings are being taught. We're teaching activities, rituals, all man-made. We're interpreting things that were interpreted for us. We are not learning for ourselves. We're looking for quick understanding from others and others' interpretation, and that's dangerous. A couple of weeks ago, I was on a podcast entitled Undressing Your Wounds, and I talked about chapter 4, church wounds, in detail. Following that, there was a minister on that same podcast, and it was entitled The True Confessions of a Man. I want to read the back of his book because this really captured me. I purchased the book while I was on my tour and read it while I was on a plane. Unveiling the Mask of the Pretender. The True Confession of a Man. I am a minister, but I preyed on the weak. I manipulated and deceived. Anything I could do to get the advantage, I did. My motives were devious. My focus was on greed, sex, and satisfaction, regardless of who I hurt. I lied, cheated, and stole from the community. I stole hearts from out of the church. You might know some people like me, politicians, ministers, the housewives, your husband, and for some, it may even be you, a pretender. And as I talk about in my book, there are a lot of pretenders. People may have right motives, right intentions. Let me talk, not motives, right intentions, but has wrong outcomes and motives. Following the crowd, doing what everyone else is doing what we've been taught to do. And then, it's amazing how certain things dropped into my presence, I'm going to say, in these past weeks. Then I had another book that came to me. Your Pastor, My Husband is the title of the book. The subtitle say, what's a woman to do when she learns that the one man that she thought was praying with an A for her had actually been preying, P-R-E-Y, on her all along. Again, I say it's no more excuses. Some people may get offended by these things and say, it's not all churches, it's not all pastors. My question is, what good is it to hear the word in quotations, assuming that is true? If I'm hurting, if I'm living in a hotel with my children, if I don't know where the next meal is going to come from, if I don't know where the next dollar is going to come from, am I supposed to go into church, have this 1 or 2 hour feel-good moment, only to go back to reality? People always want to say, pray. What happens when the prayer isn't answered? Who's addressing that? What do we do? So does prayer not work? Do we stop praying? What do we do? How do we respond to this? Or do we just continue to pretend? Is God really the center? Is God really in control? A lot of people, we hear this, God is in control. Or is he in charge? Don't we have some responsibility? Don't we have to take responsibility for our actions, the things that we do? Or do we just want to cop out and push it on God and pretend? Just amazing how we continue to do some things and say some things just because we were taught. Few will address these questions without being too religious. I came across another book. Like I said, these books in the past couple of weeks. And this book is entitled, Lord, I Don't Want to Die a Christian. And I listened to this young lady who's also a licensed minister. That title really caught me. I even reached out to her and had a conversation with her because I wanted to understand, why did she write this book? Where did the source of it come from? One of the things that she said, she grew up in the church. And if you've read my bio, I went to the School of Ministry for 2 years to unlearn or try to understand some of the things that I was taught that were in error. But no one wanted to talk about it. No one wants to talk about when you ask these hard questions. And so I found this young lady who was addressing some of these questions. And she was studying in China. And I asked her for an example. This is the example she gave me. She said how the church manipulates and skews and changes things. And I asked her for an example. And she said the word fornication. Fornication, as we have been taught, is having sex, single people having sex when they're not married. She said to me, that definition is not accurate. She said, when you look up the Hebrew word, fornication has to do with adultery. How many of us were taught these things? Now, I haven't studied Hebrew. I haven't even researched that. But her book is about many of the questions and things that we are concerned about. Some of us will continue. No, I'm going to say some of us. Some people will continue to follow what they've been taught because it's comfortable. They don't want to rock the boat. But what happens when what you have believed and thought was accurate is not accurate? Where is the accountability? Where is the accountability? Are we relating to God? Are we relating to someone else's interpretation of God? I've discovered that it's a vertical relationship between God. I have also learned to stop leaning on someone else's interpretation. They all go to, not going to say all, let me take that back. Many go to the same school of thought. And if you're going to the same school of thought, could it be that your translation and interpretation can be inaccurate? Instead of recognizing that and being accountable and saying that it's inaccurate. We want to continue to follow the falsehoods, because when we find out that what we've learned is inaccurate, it makes you start questioning some things, not questioning God. It's not God, it's man. And I encourage people to get understanding for yourself. Find sources. Just because one person says it, another person says it, and several people say it, doesn't always mean that's confirmation. It may mean that they have gone to the same school of thought or have been indoctrinated with the same teachings. There's a difference between faith, foolishness, and fallacy. What are you following? We do so many things out of habit because it was our upbringing and that's how we were taught. But is it really correct? What happens when you discover something different? Where's the accountability? No one wants to rock the boat, and no one wants you to hold them accountable. That's part of the problem in the world. We want to hold everybody accountable. And if you read the book, I mentioned we want to hold people accountable, but we don't want to hold people accountable in the church, from the pulpit to the pew. We want to extend this grace. We want to extend this mercy to people. But outside of the church, we want to hang everybody. We don't want to turn the other cheek. We turn the other cheek in the church, but not outside the church. We have to do better. Our walk has to align. Our character has to align. Like I said, in all thy getting, get understanding for yourself. Here's a question. Many of you know that I've struggled and still struggle with attending church. Why are we attending, going back to places that wound us? Why? Out of habit and feeling uncomfortable. I had the pleasure of going to an Episcopal church this past book tour. And it was amazing how the service was. First of all, it was about the word, pretty much, and go home. Is that what the church should be focusing on? The word, and ministering to people based on what God says, and not necessarily what they want. These programs, these rituals and things. Again, I go back to, what good is any of that when I'm hurting? What good is any of that when I don't have a roof over my head or know where my next meal is coming from? What good is that when my mental state is challenged? What good is that if I'm struggling with my sins and nobody wants to help me, but they want to gossip about it? I read the back of that book about that minister. Many will gossip about that instead of helping him through his struggles. He was very transparent in that book. And he said that he's still dealing with those struggles. But who's coming alongside and helping him? Who's coming alongside and helping others? I hope that our society becomes better. I hope that we will start taking a look at ourselves on the inside. Start doing things that matter, not what is popular. So my message, my mission, and my movement is to unsilence the silence. And that's the purpose of Wounds of Wisdom. Please pick up a copy by going to my website, drmonicajackson.com. You can follow me on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. My PR person is making me get a TikTok, so I'll be doing that soon. So until next time, don't let anyone disturb your peace or your joy. Have an amazing day, and think about some of these things. Become who you want others to become. Have a great day.